At dinner, my brother called me a failure, so I revealed I'd paid his rent for 3 years. I used to think my family was not that different from anyone else's. A little loud, sometimes, petty, occasionally too nosy for their own good, but basically normal. At least, that was what I told myself for years. You learn to brush things off when you grow up in a house like mine. You laugh when your mom makes a backhanded comment about your clothes. You shrug when your dad pretends not to hear you because your younger brother has started talking about his latest, almost success. You convince yourself that none of it really means anything, that they love you in their own way, that every family has favorites and blind spots and old habits nobody wants to name. But there is always a moment when the illusion finally breaks. Not a dramatic explosion at first, not some thunderclap from the sky, just one sharp, specific moment where everything becomes painfully clear. Mine happened over roast chicken and red wine at a dinner table I did not even want to sit at in the first place. My name is Derek. I am 31 years old and I work in software development. It is not glamorous, but I am good at it. I live alone in the city, make a comfortable income, and over time, I have carved out a peaceful little life for myself. I like quiet mornings, long bike rides, and spending weekends tinkering with old video game mods. I am single, yes, but not because of some tragic failure or because I am undateable, no matter how often my family likes to joke about it. After a messy breakup in my mid-20s, I decided I would rather be alone than stay with someone who made me feel small. Apparently, that never sat right with my parents. In my family, my younger brother Connor has always been the golden child. He is 28, charming in a greasy car salesman kind of way, and always talking just loud enough for everyone to hear how busy, important, or stressed he is, even when he is between jobs, which, to be fair, is often. Connor is always about to land something big. He is always one conversation away from a life-changing opportunity. But in the meantime, he has spent years floating on a mattress of soft expectations and my parents' bottomless excuses. He is the kind of guy who thinks ambition is a personality trait, but cannot wake up before 11 in the morning without a Red Bull and a guilt trip. Mom dotes on him. He is just figuring things out, she always says, even though he has crashed 3 cars and ghosted 2 landlords. Dad likes to pretend he is tough on Connor, grumbling about his irresponsibility while pouring him another glass of bourbon and slipping him a $100 bill when he thinks no one is looking. I used to be angry about it. Then, over the years, I became numb. And until recently, I was even helping Connor myself, quietly behind the scenes. 3 years ago, after he got evicted from yet another apartment, I started covering part of his rent under the agreement that he would pay me back once he got back on his feet. I did not tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends. I just kept sending the money every month, like a fool. That dinner was not supposed to be dramatic. It was my mom's idea, a family night at their house, now that Connor was supposedly finally doing better. The invitation came with guilt baked right into it. "We never see you anymore," Mom texted, even though I had visited just a few weeks earlier. "It would mean a lot to your father." I almost declined. I had a stressful project going live that week, and honestly, I did not have the energy for the usual passive-aggressive comments and performative small talk. But guilt is powerful. So, I showed up. I dressed nicely. I brought a bottle of wine. I even offered to help with the dishes. Dinner started exactly the way I expected. Polite conversation about work, the weather, and a new neighbor who had apparently committed the unforgivable crime of painting their shutters turquoise. I mostly kept quiet, nodding and smiling. Dad asked how my job was going, then cut me off halfway through my answer to ask Connor if he was still talking to that recruiter in Atlanta. Connor, of course, launched into a dramatic story about how he had almost been flown out for a 6-figure role, but the company wanted someone with more niche experience or something. The usual smoke and mirrors. Mom beamed at him like he was auditioning for American Idol. I was chewing a piece of chicken when it happened. Connor leaned back in his chair, took a sip of wine, and looked at me with that smug grin he wore like cologne. "Still single, huh?" he said, casual as anything. "Must be lonely being a failure." Then he chuckled. He chuckled like it was a harmless joke between brothers, like it was not a deliberate shot fired across the table in front of our parents, who both gave soft, knowing laughs, as if he had said something cheeky and clever instead of cruel. I blinked my fork halfway to my mouth, my heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. For a second, I said nothing. I just stared at him and wondered what kind of person could say something like that with a straight face, especially after everything I had done for him, everything I had sacrificed, the jobs I had passed on, the vacations I had not taken, the countless times I had said yes when I should have said, "Are you kidding me?" I felt heat rising in my neck. My first instinct was to laugh it off and pretend it did not sting. But something in me snapped instead. Quietly, cleanly, like the final thread breaking in a sweater you have been tugging at for too long. So I set my fork down, wiped my mouth with my napkin, looked my brother dead in the eye, and said, "Funny coming from a guy whose rent I have paid for 3 years. Not anymore, by the way." You could have heard a pin drop. Connor's face froze. The smirk evaporated like steam. Mom's mouth fell open in slow motion like a cartoon. Dad set his wine glass down a little too hard. The silence was deafening, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt something sharp, cold, and strangely satisfying settle in my chest. Control. But that was just the beginning, because what I said at that table was not revenge. It was a warning shot, one crack in the dam. I did not know it yet, but that dinner would become the turning point in everything. The way my family saw me, the way I saw myself, and the way all our dirty little secrets came tumbling out like junk from an overstuffed attic. You think you know your family until money is involved, until pride is on the line, until someone finally decides they are done being the doormat. And I was done. So done. But what came next, even I did not see it coming. Mom was the first to break the silence, though she did not so much speak as gasp. It was theatrical, as if I had confessed to robbing a bank or kicking a puppy. "Derek," she hissed, clutching her pearls. Not literally, but she might as well have. Why would you say something like that? I looked at her calmly, quietly. I did not raise my voice. I did not gloat. I was not interested in causing a scene for the sake of it. I was tired. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. Connor was still frozen. The smugness had drained out of his face, entirely replaced with something between confusion and indignation. He looked like a magician whose trick had failed mid-performance, stunned that I had pulled back the curtain in front of the audience. I do not know what you are talking about," he stammered, finally laughing nervously and glancing at our parents for support. "Derek is exaggerating." "Am I?" I said, folding my napkin and setting it beside my plate. "Because I have the bank records if you need a refresher. Every month, on time, like clockwork." My dad cleared his throat sharply, the universal father signal for enough. He hated confrontations, always had. If a problem could not be solved with a raised eyebrow or a passive-aggressive silence, he wanted no part of it. "We do not need to rehash all that at the dinner table," he said, not looking at me. Of course not, because when Connor made a dig, it was just boys being boys. But when I clapped back with facts, suddenly it was inappropriate. I leaned back and smiled politely. "Right, sorry. I forgot we do not talk about actual problems here." Mom stood up, then flustered, grabbing my plate even though I had not finished eating. "Why do I not get dessert?" she said too brightly, her voice wobbling. "I made that lemon tart you like." "I am not really hungry anymore," I replied. The second the words left my mouth, I saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes. And here's the thing. I did not want to hurt her. That was the part that stung the most. She was my mother. But somewhere along the way, she had stopped being a mom and started being a public relations manager for my brother's failures. Every gathering, every conversation, every compliment went through Connor first. His victories were paraded. My stability was ignored. I had spent years being the quiet, reliable one, the background character in my own family, and I was just supposed to keep smiling through it. That night, I left early. I did not say goodbye. I did not hug anyone. I got in my car and just sat there for a while, watching the lights in the living room flicker through the blinds. I thought about all the birthdays I had spent organizing gifts for both of us while Connor forgot mine entirely. I thought about the time he totaled his car, and I lent him mine for 6 months without asking for gas money. I thought about the week our dad had surgery, and I took time off work to help around the house while Connor showed up 2 days late with a hangover and a half-eaten burger. It was not just the rent, it was everything. 1,000 tiny moments had piled up over the years until I could no longer tell where the resentment ended and my spine began. The next morning, I got a text from Mom. "We need to talk." That was really uncalled for last night. Not, "How are you feeling?" Not, "I did not realize things had gone that far." No, my behavior was the problem. I did not reply. Over the next few days, the silence grew heavy. I did not get my usual Sunday check-in call, no guilt-trippy recipe photos, no "saw this and thought of you" messages. I should have felt guilty, but instead, I felt something close to relief. For once, the emotional labor was not mine to do. I went to work, I hit the gym, I cleaned my apartment, listened to old jazz records, and watched a documentary about mountain climbers who risk their lives just to stand alone at the top of the world. For the first time in a long time, I actually understood the appeal. Then, on Thursday, Connor called. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey," he said, his voice strained and performative, like he was already preparing for an Emmy-winning monologue. "Can we talk?" "I think we are doing that now," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee and keeping my tone neutral. There was a pause. "I just did not know you felt that way," he said finally. "If you were struggling with something, you could have just told me." That made me laugh. I could not help it. "You are serious," I said, sitting down. "I was struggling, Connor. I was covering your rent because you begged me to. You promised you would pay me back. You told me not to tell Mom and Dad. Because you were handling it like a man. And then, you mocked me at dinner in front of them. That is not struggling. That is using me." "I did not mean it like that," he muttered. "No, you meant it exactly like that. You wanted the applause without doing the work, and you have always gotten it. That is not my fault, but I am done pretending I do not see it." He was quiet for a second. "So what? You are cutting me off?" "Yep," I said. "Rent is on you now. Grow up." He hung up. I expected backlash. I expected anger. But I did not expect the campaign that followed. First came the calls from Mom. "Connor has been having a really hard time lately, Derek. He is not as strong as you are. He just needs a little more time." Then came the group texts, suddenly revived after months of silence. "Connor got a flat tire on his way to a job interview. Can anyone help? Connor's apartment might have mold. Do you know any lawyers? Connor is feeling really low today. Just letting you boys know." Every message was a pebble tossed into my shoe. Small, annoying, impossible to ignore. It was not helpful communication. It was pressure dressed up as family concern. Emotional blackmail with a smiley face. At one point, Mom called me while I was at work and actually said, "You are being really selfish right now." Selfish. The word made my skin crawl. I had given so much. Time, money, peace of mind. And now that I was not giving more, I was the problem. "I am not selfish," I said calmly. "I am just not a doormat." Then I ended the call. A few days later, I got a Venmo notification. Connor had requested $800. Just the word "please" in the memo line. I did not respond. An hour later, he texted me. "Really? After everything I have done for you?" That one sent me into a full-blown spiral. I paced around my apartment for 10 straight minutes, trying to wrap my head around the sheer gall of it. Everything he had done for me. Like what? Borrow my headphones and never return them. Crash on my couch for a week that turned into 3 months. Introduce me to a girl he later tried to hit on behind my back. My therapist once told me, narcissists rewrite history to suit their version of events, and if you are not careful, they will make you doubt your own memories. I used to think she was being dramatic. Now, I was not so sure. The final straw came a week later. I had taken a Saturday off to relax. No work, no calls, just a lazy morning with coffee and an old video game I had not played in years. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. I was not expecting anyone. When I opened it, there stood Mom, purse slung over her shoulder, wearing a look of wounded disappointment, so practiced it could have been bottled and sold. Hi, sweetheart, she said, stepping past me without waiting for permission. I blinked. Hi. She walked straight into my living room and sat down like she owned the place. I came to talk, she said, face to face. I stood there, baffled. About what? She looked at me, her eyes already brimming. Connor has been struggling again. He might lose his apartment. He told me you cut him off and now he is behind on bills. He is embarrassed. He did not want me to come, but I had to. I stayed silent. I let her finish. He made a mistake, Derek, but we help family. That is what we do. You have always been the responsible one, the strong one. Please, just until he is back on his feet. I sat down across from her and let the weight of her words settle like dust. You want me to keep paying for his lifestyle because he is too proud to admit he has never grown up? I said slowly. You want me to undo the only boundary I have ever set because it makes you uncomfortable? Her lips tightened. That is not fair. No, I said. It is not. None of this has ever been fair. But I am not playing along anymore. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood up. I hope you can live with yourself, she said coldly. And she walked out. No hug, no goodbye, just the heavy click of the door closing behind her. I sat there for a long time after she left. No music, no distractions, just silence and the creeping realization that something fundamental had shifted, not just in my family dynamic, but in me. For the first time in my life, I had said no and meant it. No caveats, no apologies. And that was when I realized they were not just upset because I had stopped helping. They were upset because they never thought I would stop. But they were in for a surprise because I was only just getting started. A week passed. No calls, no text, no unexpected knocks at my door. For the first time in months, maybe years, there was silence. And silence, as it turns out, can be both comforting and terrifying. I thought I would feel free after finally standing up for myself, liberated even. But instead, I found myself watching my phone like it was a ticking bomb, waiting for the next guilt trip or veiled accusation. But nothing came. At first, I assumed they were giving me space. Maybe they were actually reflecting. Maybe Mom was starting to see the imbalance. Maybe Connor was having a long overdue mirror moment. I even began to feel a bit of hope, foolish in hindsight. Because what I did not realize was that the silence was not space. It was strategy. They were not retreating. They were regrouping. It started with a phone call from Aunt Rachel, my mom's sister, the unofficial family gossip line, and someone I rarely spoke to outside of holidays. She was always nice enough, but her loyalty was with my mother through and through. So when her name popped up on my phone on a Thursday evening, I hesitated. Answering felt like walking into a conversation that had already been scripted. Hi, sweetheart, she chirped, overly cheerful. Got a minute? I braced myself. Sure, what's up? Oh, I was just talking to your mom the other day. She is so worried about you. Said you have been distant, cold. I told her that does not sound like Derek. He has always been such a sweetheart. Uh-huh, I said, already regretting picking up. Well, things have been a little tense lately. Oh, I heard, she said in that sugary tone people use right before a character assassination. About the money. You poor thing. You have always been so generous. It must be hard feeling like no one appreciates you. That caught me off guard. Thanks, I said slowly. But honey, she added gently, you know, your brother has had a hard life. All those ups and downs. It is just who he is. You cannot change him. And your mother, well, she has always tried her best, has she not? Maybe she does not always say the right thing, but she is only human. And there it was, the subtle shift. The backpedal from, you were right to be the bigger person. I am not trying to change anyone, I said. I am just done sacrificing my peace for people who do not respect me. She sighed. Of course. Of course. I just hope you do not let one little family spat turn into something bigger. You know how time slips by. People grow old. Regrets pile up. I did not say anything because I could feel it. This was not just Aunt Rachel reaching out. This was a message hand-delivered and guilt-wrapped from Mom herself. They had enlisted the cavalry. The family charm offensive had begun. Over the next few days, it snowballed. My cousin texted me out of the blue asking if I was okay. An old family friend I had not spoken to since college left a comment on one of my Facebook posts. Families fight, but love wins in the end. I even got an actual email from my uncle. The subject line was, "Just some thoughts." Inside was a long-winded essay about forgiveness, spiritual growth, and how holding grudges makes you bitter, not better. It was surreal, like they had formed a campaign committee behind my back. But I kept quiet. I did not argue. I did not post cryptic quotes. I did not write long rants. I just watched it all unfold, growing more disillusioned by the day. Then the betrayal came. It was a Friday afternoon. I had just wrapped up a long Zoom call and was looking forward to a quiet evening when I got a call from my landlord. That alone was odd. He rarely called, preferring emails for anything transactional. I answered, and his tone was tense from the start. "Derek," he said, "I just wanted to give you a heads up. Your brother dropped by today." My stomach tightened. "Connor." "Yeah?" "Said you had given him permission to come by and pick up some stuff. Said he had lost his key and needed access. He seemed convincing. Had your last name, your address, everything." "What?" I said sharply, already standing up. "What did he take?" "Well," the landlord said, hesitantly, "nothing, luckily. My maintenance guy happened to be here and called me just in case. I told him to hold off. Figured I should check with you first." I stood there in stunned silence, trying to process what I had just heard. Connor had tried to get into my apartment using my name, using our relationship, and not even to confront me, just to sneak in. My voice was cold when I finally responded. "Thank you for calling me. He absolutely did not have permission. If he comes by again, do not let him in. And please call the police if he pushes it." The landlord sighed. "I figured it might be something like that." "Family drama," I muttered. "Something like that," he said. I hung up and stared at the wall for a solid minute. My heartbeat was loud in my ears, not from fear, but fury. That was the line. That was the line. It was not about money anymore. It was not about snide remarks or favoritism or even emotional manipulation. This was violating trust, and I knew exactly where he had gotten the idea. Mom, maybe not directly, but I could feel her fingerprints on it. The desperation, the entitlement, the assumption that I would not do anything about it, that I would fold like I always had. They thought I would bark. They did not think I would bite. I called Connor immediately. He did not pick up. I called again, voicemail. On the third try, he finally answered. His voice groggy and defensive, like I had just woken him from a nap he did not earn. "Yo, you tried to get into my apartment." Pause, then a scoff. "What? No." "My landlord called me, said you claimed I gave you permission." Another pause. "I just needed to grab something," he said finally, like that somehow justified it. "I left a few things there last year. You said I could come back for them anytime." Last year, not today, and not without telling me. "You tried to lie your way into my home, Connor." "Oh, come on, man, do not be dramatic." I felt my hands clenching into fists. "You trespassed. If the maintenance guy had not been there, you might have gotten in. What then? You start going through my things, steal from me, crash on my couch again?" "You are blowing this out of proportion," he snapped. "You think you are so perfect now, huh? Just because you have a little money and your own place?" "I earned all of it," I said, voice shaking. "While you were wasting chances and burning bridges, I was working, and I kept helping you. I kept helping you even when you did not deserve it. And this is what you do?" He did not answer, so I hung up. Then I blocked him. Not just on my phone, on everything. Social media, email, even our shared family Spotify plan. Petty maybe, but symbolic. I was done pretending we were brothers in any meaningful way. Blood means nothing without trust. Then I texted Mom. "Connor tried to get into my apartment today. This is no longer about money. This is about safety. I have blocked him. Please respect my boundaries, or I will go no contact with you too." No reply. Not for hours. And when it finally came, it said, "You know, your brother did not mean any harm. Do not destroy this family over a misunderstanding." That was it. No apology, no outrage, no motherly concern that her younger son had tried to deceive his way into her older son's home. Just a plea not to destroy the family, as if it had not been slowly corroding for years, as if I was the one holding a match, not standing in the ashes. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake replaying every moment, every red flag I had ignored, every time I had brushed off the favoritism as just how it was. They did not care about me. They cared about keeping the machine running. And now that I had stopped fueling it, they were ready to let me go. But I was not going to slink away quietly. No, I had a plan. And it was time to let them see what happened when the failure stopped playing nice. I will not lie. After that last message from Mom, something inside me cracked. Not in the loud, dramatic way you see in movies. There was no shouting, no throwing plates, no sudden urge to scream into the void. It was quieter than that, more hollow, like discovering your favorite childhood book was full of pages you had never noticed before, and they all painted you as the villain. I sat on my couch that night with all the lights off, just the faint glow of the street lamp bleeding through the curtains, and the hum of my fridge filling the silence. I do not know how long I sat there, but when I finally stood, my legs felt heavy. Not physically, emotionally. It is strange how grief works, because that was what it was. Grief. Not for a person, but for the idea of something. The idea that your family is supposed to be your anchor. The people who show up. The people who care. The people who protect you. And when you realize they are not, when you finally admit they never really were, it feels like a death. Not of them, but of the version of you that still hoped. I did not go to work the next day. I called in sick and stayed in bed until noon, not even scrolling on my phone, just lying there. My mind was a swamp, no clear thoughts, no anger, no plans, just weight. The kind of weight that makes brushing your teeth feel like a monumental task. But eventually, routine won. It always does. I got up, I ate something, cold leftover pasta, barely palatable. I showered, though the water felt too hot and the bathroom mirror too cruel. Then I sat back down at my desk and opened a blank document. I did not know what I was going to type. I just needed to do something. What came out was not a letter. It was not a rant. It was a list. A list of everything I had done for Connor over the past 10 years. The apartment rent, obviously. $800 a month for 36 months. $28,800. The car repair I covered when he crashed into a mailbox. $2,400. The time I paid off his credit card because collectors were harassing him. $5,100. Countless dinners, gas fill-ups, Uber rides, and emergency bailouts. Conservatively, another $3,000. Total, $39,300. And that was just the financial part. There was no column for emotional labor. No line item for all the times I stood between him and Dad's rage when he missed another deadline. No valuation for all the times I bit my tongue at family dinners while he made me the punchline. No invoice for the weekends I spent helping him move, rewrite his resume, or edit his cover letters. I stared at the number on the screen. Nearly $40,000. That could have been a new car, a vacation, a down payment, a life. And I had handed it over, piece by piece, like candy at Halloween. The worst part was that he had never once said thank you. Not once, not meaningfully. Maybe a casual thanks bro here and there, usually followed by I will get you back. But never eye contact, never acknowledgement, never accountability. The rest of that week was a blur. I went back to work, but I kept my head down. I declined happy hours. I skipped gym sessions. I turned off social media. My phone vibrated here and there, but I did not check it. I could not. Every notification felt like a dagger waiting to be unsheathed. But the world does not stop spinning just because you are in emotional quicksand. On Monday, my boss pulled me aside after our morning meeting. "You okay?" he asked gently. I nodded. Just a rough week. He did not press. "Take Friday off. Use it as a mental health day." I nearly teared up, not because I needed the day, though I did, but because he noticed. My boss, a man with 50 other employees and a mountain of deadlines, noticed that something was off. My own mother had responded to a potential break-in with, "Do not destroy this family." That contrast haunted me. So I took Friday off, but not to mope. I drove out of the city 2 hours north to a lake I used to visit as a teenager. It was not anything fancy, just a secluded spot near a worn-out dock, the kind of place that does not show up on tourist maps. I packed a sandwich, a notebook, and a blanket. No music, no laptop, just me and the sound of wind moving through trees. I sat by the water for hours. I watched ducks glide past. I threw pebbles. I let the breeze tug at my sleeves. And somewhere between sandwich bites and my third failed attempt at skipping a stone, I decided something. I was done reacting, done just enduring things. Because that was what I had been doing my whole life. Enduring, smiling through it, minimizing my own discomfort to keep the peace, making myself smaller so other people did not feel inadequate, shrinking in rooms where I should have stood tall. I was the nice one, the responsible one, the one who did not need anything. But that was not strength. It was self-erasure. And now I was going to rewrite that. It started small. I canceled the shared Spotify family plan. The notification alone must have sent a ripple through the group chat, but I did not care. I changed my Netflix password and removed every device. I updated my bank account security questions. I called my landlord and asked him to put a note in my file. Do not let anyone access my unit unless confirmed by voice. I even reached out to a lawyer I had met at a conference months earlier just for advice. Not legal action yet, but information. I asked what it would take to legally distance myself from family. What protections existed if a sibling became a threat? What lines had to be crossed? She was helpful, not alarmed. In fact, she sounded like she had had this conversation before, and that alone comforted me. I was not crazy. I was not overreacting. This was not some petty feud. This was survival. Around that time, something strange happened. Connor disappeared. Radio silence. No texts, no calls, no random Venmo requests, no accidental tags on social media. For a moment, I thought maybe he had finally gotten the message. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe Mom had reined him in. But I should have known better. Connor did not disappear unless he was planning something, and I was about to find out just how deep that rabbit hole went. The first sign came through LinkedIn of all places. A colleague messaged me with a screenshot. "Hey man, weird question. Did your brother apply here last year? Thought you would want to see this." The screenshot was of Connor's profile, except his bio had changed. It now listed him as a freelance software consultant with experience in AI development, product management, and back-end architecture. Underneath were 3 projects from my portfolio with altered dates and company names. He had literally stolen my work. He had phrased it like it was his own. He had even quoted language from a past conference talk I had given, word for word. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding. For a second, I thought maybe it was a glitch, some bizarre error. But no, it was intentional. Connor had turned himself into a watered-down version of me, a Frankenstein's monster stitched together with pieces of my accomplishments. And suddenly, I knew why he had gone quiet. He was not gone. He was becoming me, or at least trying to. I messaged him, not to scold, not to confront, just one sentence. "You need to take my work off your profile. Now." No reply. I gave it an hour. Then I emailed the companies he had listed, most of which I had consulted for, and sent them my original work with timestamps. One responded immediately. The VP wrote, "Thanks for flagging this." That name sounded familiar. "We will handle it." I did not know what handle it meant, but I trusted it would make a dent. The other shoe dropped 2 days later when I got a call from my mother. "What did you do?" she snapped. No greeting. "Excuse me, Connor? Said you got him blacklisted. He was just trying to build a new career. He admired your work. He thought you would be proud." I almost laughed. Proud? He impersonated me. "Mom, he stole from me." "You always twist things," she hissed. "No wonder no one wants to be around you anymore." And with that, she hung up. No wonder. That one stuck with me. Not, "I am disappointed." Not, "That was wrong." No wonder. It was the first time I realized she had made her choice. There was no middle ground anymore. No mother torn between sons, just a woman protecting her favorite, and a man realizing he was now free. Because once you hit rock bottom with the people who raised you, a strange clarity settles in. You stop hoping for the apology. You stop rewriting your past. You start writing your future. Quietly, strategically, no fanfare, no warnings. You simply begin. And that was exactly what I was doing. It is funny how rock bottom, once it settles beneath your feet, can become solid ground. I had spent years running on a treadmill of guilt and obligation, always feeling like I was behind, like I was one favor away from finally being accepted. But now that the treadmill had stopped, now that I had stepped off it for good, I realized how much energy I had been wasting just to stand still. And once I stopped pouring into them, I had so much left for myself. It did not happen overnight. There was no sudden montage of me in sunglasses, getting promoted, dating a supermodel, and walking away from explosions in slow motion. Real life does not work that way. But the shift was real, and it lasted. The first real change came quietly on a Wednesday morning. I had been working on a side project for months, a machine learning tool for automating customer support analysis. Nerdy, I know, but it had real value. My idea was to help mid-size companies parse customer tickets and flag recurring issues, using a mix of sentiment analysis and keyword clustering. A mouthful, sure, but in practice, it meant turning noise into strategy. I had built the minimum viable product alone. Nights, weekends, breaks between Zoom calls, and finally, it was ready. I posted a short video demo on LinkedIn. I was not expecting much. I was just putting it out there. By noon, the video had over 3,000 views. By Friday, it had 27,000. A week later, I got a message from a startup accelerator asking if I was open to pitching the tool at an upcoming tech showcase. Me, pitching. A year earlier, I would have hesitated. I would have told myself I was not ready. Maybe I would have even asked Connor to help because he always liked being on stage. But now I knew better. I said yes. I spent 2 weeks preparing that pitch like my life depended on it. I trimmed the fat. I polished the user interface. I practiced my timing. I even rented a decent jacket, something sharp and clean, and got my hair cut for the first time in months. It was not about looks, not really. It was about reclaiming something I had let slip away. Self-respect. The day of the showcase, I walked into that room full of polished founders and sleepless developers with one thought in my head. You have nothing to prove to anyone but yourself. I nailed the pitch. 15 minutes. No stumbles, no filler. By the time I walked off the stage, 2 people were already handing me their cards. A third messaged me that night with questions about integration. A week later, I had a small angel investor ready to write a check for $50,000 in exchange for early equity. I could not believe it. Well, I could. I had built it. I knew its value. But for once, I let myself enjoy the moment. Not in a performative way. Not because I wanted my parents to finally say, "We are proud of you," but because I was proud of myself. And that was new. I used part of the money to upgrade my apartment. Not move, just enhance. A proper standing desk, an ergonomic chair, a replacement for my ancient laptop, a beast of a machine that ran everything like butter, a noise-canceling headset that made Zoom calls feel like private conversations inside a vault. Slowly, my home began to feel less like a holding cell and more like a headquarters. I started taking care of myself in other ways too. I signed up for therapy again. This time, with someone who specialized in adult children of emotionally manipulative families. I went to the gym, not out of shame, but because it felt good to move again. I read books. I cooked actual meals. I took long walks at sunset without checking my phone. Bit by bit, I was building a life where I did not just survive, I existed. And the best part was that no one in my family knew. I had gone dark, quiet, off the grid. And it was the most peaceful silence I had ever experienced. I expected Mom or Connor to try again, another guilt message, another fake crisis. But nothing came. Maybe they finally realized I was not bluffing, or maybe more likely, they assumed I would circle back eventually like I always had. After all, that was what I did, right? I was the stable one, the good son, the one who always came home. but I was not that person anymore. And eventually, I knew I would have to show them. I did not plan for the opportunity to come when it did. It was about 6 months after I launched the product. Let's call it Query Pulse. We had just landed a pilot deal with a mid-tier SaaS company that wanted a full implementation. It was not earth-shattering money, but it was real money enough to hire 2 contractors to help build out the dashboard and support requests. One of them was an old college friend named Rachel, sharp, no nonsense, and one of the best UX designers I had ever worked with. The other was a quiet back-end developer I found through a Discord server. Within weeks, we were moving like a real team. Momentum built fast. Users started coming in. So did feedback. Some critical, some glowing. All useful. I set up a newsletter, a blog, and even started recording small video tutorials. Nothing flashy, nothing viral, just clear, useful, honest content. The kind of thing I would have needed when I was starting out. That was when the podcast invites began. Small shows at first, indie tech hosts, startup junkies, but the audiences were loyal, curious, and engaged. One host, a guy named Leo, who ran a show called Bits and Pieces, asked me to do a deep dive episode on solo founder resilience. It was supposed to be a 30-minute chat. We ended up talking for 2 hours. It was the most open I had ever been publicly about burnout manipulation and the emotional cost of carrying other people's failures. I did not name names. I did not throw my family under the bus, but I told the truth. I said I used to think being strong meant never saying no. I said guilt had kept me tethered to people who drained me. I said walking away was not abandonment, it was survival. When the episode dropped, I expected some quiet feedback, maybe a few direct messages. Instead, it exploded. I got emails, dozens of them. People said they saw themselves in my story. A founder whose brother kept stealing from his company. A woman who had spent 20 years covering her father's debts. A guy whose mother guilt-tripped him into giving up a job offer so he would not move too far away. It hit something real. I had not meant to become a voice for anyone. I just wanted to breathe. But now that I had, others were breathing too. Around this time, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone with a familiar last name. A recruiter from the company Connor had tried to impersonate me at. He said simply, "We spoke with someone last year who misrepresented themselves. Thanks for flagging it. If you ever want to talk about opportunities, the door is open." I politely declined. I was not looking to be an employee anymore. But I did smile when I read it. Because that was justice. Not revenge, not spite. Truth. And the truth, when you stand in it long enough, becomes armor. Still, I did not reach out to my family. Even as I grew, even as Query Pulse gained traction, even as I began getting invitations to speak at small tech conferences, share lessons, and talk shop, I stayed quiet. Because I did not need their applause. I did not need them at all. But life, as always, has a sense of timing you cannot predict. One Sunday morning, I got an email from an address I did not recognize. Subject: Your family wants to talk. No body. Just that subject, and a scanned wedding invitation attached. Connor's wedding. To a woman I had never heard of. In 3 weeks. No RSVP link, no personal message. No note from mom. Just my name, the date, and a reminder that family is forever. And that was when I knew they needed something. Because if they truly wanted to reconcile, they would have picked up the phone, written a letter, shown remorse. But this was not reconciliation. This was a baited hook, and I had no intention of biting. Still, I was not going to ignore it, because sometimes the best way to reclaim your story is to show up on your own terms. And this wedding was going to be the perfect stage. Not for revenge, not for drama, for truth. Because the man they expected to walk through those doors, the quiet, agreeable brother who never made waves, was gone. And in his place stood someone who did not need their approval to be whole. Let's talk about the wedding. But first, let me be clear. I had no intention of going. Not at first. When that email landed in my inbox with Connor's wedding invitation coldly attached like a corporate memo, I almost laughed. After everything they had done, after the lies, the emotional warfare, the fake LinkedIn profile, the attempted break-in, they thought I would show up and smile for pictures? But as I sat there, staring at that RSVP PDF, a realization hit me. They were not inviting me because they missed me, they were inviting me because they needed me. And that was when I knew this was not just a wedding, it was a setup, a display, a stage for Connor to finally win. The prodigal failure returns triumphantly, now mature, responsible, and married. And me? I was meant to be a silent extra in the background. Maybe even a tool for his redemption arc. Look, even Derek came, they would say. As if the broken relationships and betrayal had all just been silly misunderstandings that time had healed. But time had not healed anything. It had sharpened everything. So I said yes. Not with a reply, not with a phone call. I clicked print, circled the date with a red marker, and tacked it to my corkboard like a deadline. Because I was not just going to that wedding. I was going prepared. And I was not going as Derek, the quiet, responsible older brother. I was going as me. The first thing I did was a little digging. If I was going to walk into enemy territory, I needed intelligence. So I went where all family secrets eventually leak. Facebook. Mom still had me blocked. So did Connor. But Aunt Rachel was still wide open and still a habitual oversharer. Her timeline was a goldmine. Photos, status updates, cryptic subtweets about some people forgetting where they came from. It was all there. But the real nugget came from a comment thread beneath a blurry photo of Connor holding a wine glass on what looked like a hotel balcony. A friend had commented, "Wow, big spenders. Is that the 4 wins?" Aunt Rachel proudly replied, "Yes, wedding and honeymoon all in one," courtesy of a very generous family friend. That made my eyebrow twitch. Connor getting married at 4 wins? That was a luxury resort north of the city. Ocean view suites, Michelin-starred catering. Not exactly, I am 3 months behind on rent kind of money. So who was this generous family friend? I Googled the venue. Bookings were listed publicly for events, and the weekend of the wedding was blocked for a private party under the name Glenridge Holdings. That was when the puzzle clicked. Glenridge Holdings was owned by Richard Barlow, a real estate investor who also happened to be one of Dad's old golf buddies. I remembered him. Bald, loud, always boasting about being self-made, even though his first 4 properties had been gifts from his father. Barlow had money influence, and apparently a soft spot for Connor. I dug deeper. Turns out, Connor had been interning at one of Barlow's smaller property firms. Unpaid, of course, but from the Instagram posts, you would think he was running the company. I even found a quote in a local business article where Barlow referred to him as a promising young leader. My jaw clenched. That was my phrase. I had once used it to describe a junior developer during a podcast episode. Word for word, Connor was still stealing from me. But now he was wearing it like a costume, polished and rebranded, preparing to walk down the aisle in a tailored suit paid for by a man who probably thought he was investing in the next tech entrepreneur. I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. He was bluffing. Connor's entire empire was made of borrowed phrases, borrowed money, and borrowed time. All I had to do was pull the right thread. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked quietly. I did not announce anything. I did not tell my friends. I did not post vague quotes about revenge or karma. I simply got to work. First, I built a portfolio site for myself. Clean, elegant, professional. Then I uploaded every major project I had ever worked on, especially the ones Connor had borrowed on his resume. Each entry was timestamped and backed up with Git logs, original client contracts, and screenshots. Next, I wrote a short blog post called How to Spot a Fake Founder. It was not aggressive. It was not bitter. It was helpful, educational. The kind of post that quietly dismantles people like Connor without naming names. But the examples were very specific. Same tools, same phrases, same projects. Then I tagged it with SEO terms like Query Pulse, B2B fraud, and yes, Glenridge Holdings intern. I did not need it to go viral. I just needed one person in Barlow's network to read it, and I made sure that would happen. I emailed a copy of the post under a pseudonym to the Glenridge Holdings press email with a polite message that said, "Thought you might want to vet your next rising star. Integrity is everything in real estate, is it not?" No signature, no return address, just a digital whisper in the right ear. The wedding was held on a Saturday, hot, humid, and smug. I wore a charcoal gray suit. No tie, clean shave, hair slicked back with just enough gel to show I cared. I arrived 10 minutes early, just as the string quartet started warming up. The venue was beautiful, I will not lie. Flower arches, ivory linens, gold-plated cutlery. Connor had gone all in. Or rather, Barlow had. I walked in, alone. No date, no entourage, just me and the version of myself they had never bothered to see. Mom spotted me first. She was standing near the reception table, clutching a clipboard like a stage manager. When her eyes landed on me, I saw it. That flicker. Surprise. Panic. A desperate mental scramble to figure out why I was there and what I might do. But she smiled. Too wide. "Derek," she said, walking over, "you made it. That means a lot." "Sure," I said calmly. Would not miss it. I watched her scan my outfit, my posture, my eyes. She was looking for a crack, a tell, something that would confirm her suspicion that I had not come in peace. But I gave her nothing. Just a serene smile and a sip of champagne. She gestured toward the seating chart. "You are at table 9, near the back, but it has a great view of the dance floor." Of course I was. I walked over. Table 9 was practically behind a pillar. My card had a typo. Derek. I smiled. They were still playing games, but not for long. The ceremony began. Guests settled. Connor walked down the aisle, beaming arm in arm with his bride, a woman I had never met, wearing a $10,000 dress and a look of curated joy. The vows were flowery and rehearsed, full of vague promises about growth and honesty. I nearly choked on my champagne. Then came the reception. Drinks, dancing, speeches. Dad gave a bland toast. Mom told a story about Connor's resilience. And then the microphone passed to Connor himself. He stepped up, tapped the mic, and cleared his throat. "I just want to say," he began, "that none of this would have been possible without the people who believed in me even when I did not believe in myself. Richard Barlow for taking a chance on me. My parents for supporting me through every twist and turn. And my beautiful wife for seeing the man I could become." He paused, then smiled in my direction. "And even my brother Derek. We may not always see eye to eye, but he has always been an example of hard work and consistency. We do not say it enough, but I admire you, man." A polite smattering of applause followed. For a moment, it almost seemed sincere. Until I saw his smirk as he handed the microphone back. That was when I knew he was not thanking me. He was using me, painting the narrative publicly, positioning himself as the grown-up, the one who had made peace, the one who had turned it all around. The guests clapped. Mom nodded misty-eyed, and Connor looked at me like he had won. That was when the projector screen flickered on behind him. The room quieted. There it was. A slideshow. Photos of the couple. Childhood memories. Connor's work. Including one slide, oh yes, of one of my projects labeled as his. My pulse slowed. I stood up, walked calmly toward the AV table, and tapped the tech guy on the shoulder. "Switch to this," I said, handing him a USB drive. Per the groom's instructions, updated presentation. He hesitated, then nodded. I stepped back. The screen changed from a photo of Connor at a laptop to a screen capture of my website, querypulse.com. Timestamps, screenshots, contracts. And at the bottom, a side-by-side comparison of Connor's LinkedIn profile and mine. Every phrase he had copied, every project he had renamed. Silence fell. Then, gasps. The screen changed again, this time to the blog post, How to Spot a Fake Founder. A beat passed. Then Richard Barlow stood up, walked over to Connor, and whispered something in his ear. Connor's face turned gray, then red, then a strange pale yellow, like a man who had just realized the floor beneath him had never been solid. He turned toward me, jaw slack. I tilted my head, raised my glass, and toasted. To truth, to peace, to walking away not as a victim, but as a man who finally knew his own worth. The fallout was not loud. That was what surprised me most. There was no screaming, no public scene, no wine glasses flying through the air like in a soap opera. Just silence. After the final slide faded off the projector screen and the last murmurs died down, the wedding reception stumbled forward like a drunk trying to remember the steps of a dance. Someone turned off the screen. The music started again, tentative and confused. Waiters brought out dessert trays as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Connor disappeared. He left the microphone on the floor and walked out through the side doors, jacket unbuttoned, one shoe dragging, like he was halfway out of his own skin. I watched him go, then sat back down at my table and ate the lemon tart they served me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Across the room, Mom stood frozen, her face caught between fury and shame. She did not approach me, not right away. She just stood there, gripping her wine glass, eyes darting to the door. Connor had vanished through, then back to me. Aunt Rachel looked like someone had just yanked the emergency brake on her worldview. Mouth open, fork midair. Dad stayed seated at his table. He did not say a word. He did not even look at me. And that said everything. Eventually, Mom came over. Her heels clicked against the marble floor like accusations. She did not sit. She just hovered above me like a thundercloud. "You could not let him have one day," she said. "No greeting. No, what was that?" I met her eyes calmly. Did he not already have every day? Her mouth opened, then closed. I kept going. He stole from me, lied about me, tried to get into my home. You ignored all of that, and now you are mad because I told the truth? "You embarrassed him," she snapped, voice trembling, "in front of everyone." "He embarrassed himself," I said. "I just held up the mirror." She stood there a moment longer. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. That was the last time we spoke. The next week, my phone stayed quiet. No family calls, no late-night texts, no attempts at damage control. They had closed ranks. I expected it. What I did not expect was what came next. 3 days after the wedding, I got an email from Richard Barlow's assistant. It was polite and short. "Mr. Barlow would like to schedule a brief call to discuss a potential consulting opportunity. He was very impressed with your work." I blinked at the screen, reread it 3 times, then exhaled through a laugh. Of course, because while Connor was licking his wounds, Richard had clearly done what any businessman does when his investment collapses. He looked for a better one. We set up the call. It lasted 15 minutes. He asked smart questions. I gave clear answers. He said he had read my blog post, recognized the problem, and wanted to explore a partnership between QueryPulse and a portfolio of his companies. Nothing official yet, but a few introductions could go a long way. When we hung up, I just sat there at my desk for a moment, thinking about how far I had come and how far I was going. Weeks turned into months. Connor resurfaced eventually, quietly, with a new job title at a smaller company. His LinkedIn went private for a while. The next time I checked, his bio had changed dramatically. No more fake projects, no more stolen buzzwords, just a modest title. Customer Success Manager. No mentions of me. I knew he hated it, but I did not gloat, because I was not angry anymore. That was the real revenge. Not the slideshow, not the ruined wedding speech, the fact that I had let go, and he could not. He was still trying to climb ladders he had not earned. I was building my own tower. Mom never reached out. I got a Christmas card from Aunt Rachel that year, just a generic Happy Holidays, with no personal note, and a photo of her dog wearing a Santa hat. I laughed when I saw it, not bitterly, just amused. Dad sent nothing, and Connor never apologized. But I did not need an apology anymore, because by then I had something better. I had peace. Real peace. The kind you do not trade for proximity. The kind that comes from drawing lines and holding them even when it is lonely, especially when it is lonely. And I had built a life that was mine, fully, finally. The last time I saw any of them was by accident 8 months later at a small tech conference downtown. I was giving a talk on integrity in software development. Afterward, there was a short question and answer session. When I stepped off stage, I saw them. Mom and Connor, standing near the exit. They did not approach me. They did not smile. They just watched me like I was a movie they did not understand anymore. I met their eyes, one at a time. Then I turned and walked the other way. Not out of spite, not out of anger, because I finally could. And as I stepped outside into the sun, my phone buzzed. An email from a VC firm in San Francisco. Subject line, interested in learning more about Query Pulse. I smiled, tucked the phone into my pocket, and kept walking. Not toward them, not away from them, just forward, on my own path, at my own pace. Finally.